Hi, welcome back. In this video we're going to look at moving between levels. So in order to move between the levels you need to get the player object to the exit symbol. So we need to get the player object from here to here. Now in the way of that we've got a lock and we've got a key. So we're going to create some code which is going to check to see if when we touch the lock we have the key. If we do have the key, then we're going to be able to move through to the next level. So let's start by firstly looking at the lock object. So if I play the game at the moment, let me just move my character up here so as when I start the game I'm starting in close to the key, so close to the lock I should say. When I run the game, currently I can move my character straight through the lock and straight to the exit. Well, that's not what we need because the lock should be blocking the character from doing so. So in order to do that, we need to set up a collision event to make sure that we check if we're colliding with a lock. And also, in the same way as we did with one of the other objects, with the wall tiles, we need to make sure that we make this object solid, otherwise we'll be able to pass through it. So let's start doing that. Let's start with that. So we're going to close that down and we're going to go back onto the workspace, and I'm going to open up my my player object. So I want to add an event to make sure that I'm checking if I'm colliding with the lock. So I'm going to add an event. I'm going to choose a collision event with objects, and I'm going to select OBJ lock. Okay, and obviously if we're colliding with the lock, we're going to check to see firstly whether we have the key, and secondly to stop us moving. So so check for the key. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So we also need to open up the object for the lock, because what we need to be doing is making that lock solid. So we're going to change that to a solid, the same as we did with the wall. So I'm checking this solid box on the OBJ lock. Okay, so let's see if that works before we go any further. So I'm up here now, and now you can see that I can't actually physically get through the lock because it's now solid. Okay, so what I need to do now is to work out whether or not my player object has the key or not. So we're going to do that by using a variable in the same way as we did before. We're going to check to see whether or not the player object has the key. So we're going to set a variable as we did for the shooting direction, and we're going to use that variable to record whether or not we have the key. So let's have a little look at that. So in the create event that we have already set up for our player, we want to identify whether or not our player actually has the key or not. So we're going to start by allocating a 0 if the player doesn't have the key, and we're going to allocate 1 if the player has collected the key. So currently at the start of the game, obviously our player object does not have the key. So we're going to declare a variable. I'm just going to call it hasKey. hasKey equals 0. So that says that the player object currently does not have the key. Now it's coming up with the exclamation mark because it's using a variable that's not used anywhere else yet. So that's nothing to worry about at the moment. Okay, so that's fine. So now what we're going to do is go and have a look at the key object. So what we want to do is when we collide with the key, we want to change this value from a 0 to a 1. So we're going to add another event, and we're going to check a collision with objects for the key. Okay, so player collecting the key. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is to change the variable, or to destroy the object. Okay, so we will look at that in a minute. So the first thing we're going to do is to declare the fact that hasKey has now changed from 0 to 1. So let's do that now then. So let's, if they collide with the key, if the player collides with the key, then we want to set has key equal to 1. Okay, so what that does to the program, that changes the variable has key from a 0, which it is at the create event for the player, to 1. So once you collide with the key, it changes it to 1. We also need to destroy the key. Now, if I did instance underscore destroy, like that, that would destroy our character, because the instance that we're in at the moment is the player object. Okay, so what we need to do, we don't want to destroy the player. What we want to do is to destroy the key, because once we've collected the key, we want to remove it from the screen. So we need to do this. We need to do with, as we did last time, open a bracket, other. We're going to come down, we're going to open those curly brackets. We're going to do instance underscore destroy. The brackets. And then we're going to close the curly brackets. Okay, now that will change has key to 1, and it will also destroy the instance. So first off, let's just make sure that when we do that, you won't be able to see whether has key is 1, but you will be able to see whether or not it destroys the key. So let's run the program. Okay, and I'm going to have to walk all the way back around to get the key. Okay, let's shoot my monster out of the way. Bye bye monster. Okay, we're going to come up down and we are going to collect the key. Boom, and down and away goes the key. Okay, so we know that the key is destroyed once we have touched it. So what we need to do now is to work out, is to remove the lock once we collide with it, if we have the key. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that now as well. So we need to be on the lock object, okay, and we need to do the following. We need to check to see, firstly, if the key has been collected, and if it has, we need to destroy the lock. So we do that using an if statement. So the if statement is something that you haven't done before, and what it does, it checks a condition, and if the condition is met, it does something. If it doesn't, it doesn't do it. Okay, so it goes in the following way. So if, open a bracket, if has key, which is our variable that holds the key, is equal to 1. Okay, now with GameMaker and with Java coding, when you're checking to see if something is equals, you use double equals. Okay, so if I did has key equals 1, what that would change, what would that would do? It would be to change the value of the variable has key to 1. Okay, if I did equals 1, what that does then, that checks to see if the value of has key is 1. So if I did this, has key equals 2, that would change the current value of the variable has key from 1, which it currently is because we picked the key up, to 2. Okay, if I did this, it would check to see if the value of has key is equal to 2. Okay, so there's a difference. So double equals is when you're checking if something is a particular value. So if has key equals 1, okay, I'm going to close the bracket and I'm going to come down to the next line, and then I'm going to open a curly bracket. What we're then going to do, we are going to change the value of has key back to 0, because when we destroy the lock, we want the value of has key to be reset to 0, so as when we go forward to the next level, we don't automatically register as having the key. So we're going to set has key equal to 0, put the semicolon in, and we are then going to do to destroy the lock. Now don't forget, if I did instance underscore destroy, that would destroy the player because we're in the player. Okay, so we need to do the with other statement again. So with other, open the curly brackets because we're inside an if statement. We're inside more curly brackets. We're going to do instance underscore destroy. Okay, with the semicolon. Then we're going to close the curly brackets for the with other statement, and then we're going to close the curly brackets for the if statement. Okay, so let's read through this. So if when I hit the lock, so this is a collision event, so when I hit the lock, it's going to check if has key equals 1. Okay, if it doesn't equal 1, it's not going to do any of this at all. It's just going to stop you going through the lock. Okay, if it does equal 1, then we're going to change the value of has key back to 0 for when we go to the next level, and then what this is going to do then is destroy the other instance, which is in our case the lock, because we're writing this piece of code in the player object. Okay, so that's what it should do. So let's test it and see if it works. So I'm just coming around to collect the key. Let's go back up. Let's get rid of this monster out of the way because I don't want that pushing me all the way back. Let's go into the lock, and hopefully when we touch the lock, it will destroy the lock. Okay, and then we should be able to move forward to the exit, which we can, and then we move forward to the exit. We haven't programmed the exit yet, but that's what we're going to look at next. So everything's working fine so far. So if we haven't got the key, it stops us going through the lock. Let's just test that as well, just before we go any further. Let's just rerun that game. There we go. Let's move around to the lock. Let's shoot the monster. There we go. Come around to the lock. I haven't got the key, don't forget, because the key is still there. So I'm just checking that piece of code I've just written, and there we go. I can go through the lock. So that's perfect, exactly what we want. Okay, so now then let's have a look at how we're going to move forward to the next level. So in order to move forward to the next level, the first thing we need to do is to have another level to move to. So what we're going to do, we're going to right click on rooms, and we're going to create a room. Okay, so there's room, and we're going to call this rm underscore, and let's say let's call it level 2. Okay, now I haven't put anything in the level yet. That's absolutely fine. The room size is wrong. Okay, so we're going to have to change that. So let's go back to room 1. Let's see what room size we got. 1920 by 1080. Let's go over here and let's change that to 1920 by 1080. Okay, and let's zoom out so as I can see all of my room. There we go. If I just zoom out just one more step, you should be able to see that I've got my whole room visible. I'm going to place my character when I come into this level. Let's say I'm going to place my character in the bottom, let's say the bottom left hand corner of the screen for now, just to test that when our player comes into the next level that it works correctly. So in order for us to keep this consistent, let's change room 1's name as well. So let's change that. We're going to rename that, and we're going to call it rm underscore level 1. Okay, to keep the naming consistent. So happy with that so far. So let's go back then and see how we code moving to that level. So in the game, we're going to have 3 different levels. So to make this easier to code, we're going to apply the collision event. This time, rather than using the object player, we're going to use the object exit. And what it's going to do is going to check the current room, and whatever room we're in, we're going to go to the next level. And we do this using something called a case statement. So I'm going to write the statement out, and then I'm going to explain to you how the statement works. So let's bring up the object for our exit, and we're going to add an event. And this time again, it's going to be a collision event. This time we're going to check whether we're colliding with the player. Okay, and this is going to be moved to level. So all this code is going to be moving to a level. Okay. Okay, so what it's going to do, it's going to switch the room. So the command we're going to be using is switch room. And what it's going to do is going to check what room we're currently in, and then it's going to switch to a given room depending on which one we're in. So it's going to give us, I'm going to type in just the one room for now because we've only got the extra level, but when we add the third level we'll add to the case statement. Okay, so it's switch, open a bracket, room. Okay, now switch room doesn't end with a semicolon because it's a function. Okay, so we open our curly brackets and then we start with our case statement. So it's case, so where rm underscore level 1. Okay, so that's our level that we're currently on. So you can see it there, look. Okay, rm underscore level 1. Okay, colon. And now we're going to switch room, so it's going to be room underscore go to. Okay, so that's a function, and then it's going to ask us what room we want to go to. So we can either put in a name of the room, or we can type in next or previous. But we're going to go to room level 2. So I'm going to open a bracket and I'm going to put rm underscore level 2. Okay, I end that with a semicolon. Once it's done that and moved to the room, we need to tell the case statement to stop. Okay, so we do that by using something called a break command. So you just type in break, like that. Okay, and then what we're going to do is just close off that square brackets, or those curly brackets. Now inside this case statement we can have a number of different rooms. So if, for example, I was in room 1 and I wanted to go to room 2, I could do the following. So you can copy and paste text. So if, for example, I had a level 3, which I haven't at the moment, but I will do soon, I could do this. Okay, so I've copied that statement. Okay, so all I've got to do then is change this. So if I was in level 2, then I could go to room level 3. Okay, so it'll check to see what level I'm currently on, and it will, it's coming up with an exclamation mark because I haven't got a level 3 at the moment. Okay, but if I had created a room, that wouldn't be there. So it would check to see what room I'm currently in, and then it would go to the appropriate room level, identified by the go to statement. So let's get rid of this because I don't want that error in my code at the moment. Okay, and let's give this a go. So let's see if this works. So I'm going to run my game. Okay, so let's see. So I know that the lock won't open if I don't have the key, so let's take the key. Okay, let's move around, let's get rid of my monster. There we go. And then we're going to come up around the maze. Down we go. Open the lock. Has key equals 1. On the exit. And now I'm in my second room. Okay, so that's how we switch between levels.